A tutorial by Learn Fast Studios.
Welcome back. In this session, let us learn about the use of throw keyword in Java. Whenever there is an exception, JVM by default will create an exception object and then it will throw. If a user would like to explicitly throw any exception, then he will be using the keyword throw. Let us see what is the use of throw keyword. Let us see the syntax. Let us try with one example. In this particular block, we don't have any statement, but we would like to throw an arithmetic exception without any reason. If you want to create that, then we can use a keyword called as an throw. After throw, we have to pass one exception object. In order to create an exception object, we will be using the keyword called as a new. Once an exception has been created and then exception object has been created, then if it is thrown, then we need to write on the mechanism to handle it. In Java, if we want to explicitly handle any exception, then we need to use a catch block. The exception here we raised is an arithmetic exception. Hence, we need to write on the corresponding catch block. Now let us compile this code and then execute check. You can observe that this statement get executed. That means this catch block get executed. Why we reach to this particular place? Because in the try block we explicitly mentioned that there is a arithmetic exception occurred in this particular try block. You may be wondering about why should we need to throw any exception. In some of the cases, JVM will by default uh, creates one mechanism to throw any exception as well as in to handle that exception. But if we want to throw any user defined exceptions, then throw keyword will help us a lot. Now let us see how we can create an user defined exception in Java. If you want to create any user defined exception in Java, then we need to define a class. Let me say my exception. This is the exception name that I'm going to give, and we need to use a keyword called as an extends, and then we need to inherit that exception class. From now onwards, this my exception will be getting the properties of exception. Now we create any constructor. This constructor is nothing but exception of. Now let me pass one string s, and this string s can be the message that we want to display. So In order to pass this message to the exception class, we'll be using super constructor. How we can call the super constructor? By using the keyword super, and then we'll be passing this string s. So whatever the message that we pass to this constructor, that will be initialized to the exceptions message, and when we are calling with the exception object dot get message, then it will display that corresponding message. Now let us throw my exception here instead of arithmetic exception. If you want to throw my exception instead of creating an object for arithmetic exception, now let us create an object for my exception, and here we need to handle this my exception object, let me say me, and then it is expecting us to pass some string, let me say big error. Okay, now what we can do is we can retrieve that message by using one method which is there in the exception class, which is me dot get message. You may observe one thing. In this my exception class, we didn't define this get message method. Then how come it is able to, this my exception object is able to access this method? Because this my exception class is extended version of this exception. So whatever the methods which are available in the exception class, all those methods can also be accessible over this my exception class. Now let us check what is the syntax java p java dot lang dot. So you can observe that this is exception class, and then this is also inheriting from the throwable class. Suppose if you want to observe what is there in the throwable class. So in this throwable class, we have one method called as an get message, which is going to return this string. So that means you, by using this my exception object, you can call this get message, which is going to return the string. Now let us see what will happen in if you compile and then execute this program. Now you can observe that we have this message, the big error. So how come we are able to put it into the live practice? Let us do one thing. Let us read a number, and whenever the number is in between 12 to 18, then let us rise there is a big error. So those are the not acceptable numbers for it. So let us, in order to read that, let me declare a variable int var, and then to read any number, then we'll be creating an object for the scanner. Scanner sc equal to new scanner of system dot in, and then val equal to sc dot next int. And then what we need to do, since scanner class is not defined within this program, we need to import that from util class. Util dot. This is how we can create the program. Let us compile our code. Let us execute. Now it is asking me to enter a number. Now, irrespective of the value, it is going to throw this big error exception. But the problem here is, now we want to check a condition. If the number is in between, if the number is greater than 18, then only we need to raise number greater than 18 error, which is nothing but invalid number error, let me say, invalid number. So now let us save this code and then execute, compile and execute. Now let us give a value which is less than 18. So 3 is less than 18. Now you can observe that we didn't raise that invalid number exception. But let us run this code once again and then give the input value as in 45. It is saying that invalid number. This is not verified by means of pre-existing exceptions, but it is handled by means of the user-defined exception, which is a my exception. This is how we can create our own exceptions in Java and then use it. Now, by looking at this code, uh, I would like to give you an assignment to read a number, and then if the number is greater than 18 and then less than 24, then we need to raise an exception which is value in between 18 to 24, and then it has to display that message. That's all for this session. Thank you. Have a great day.